Delicate Country Ballads, a collection of country ballads. It was 20 years ago today when, well, may not have been today, but it was definitely 20 years ago when I recorded my first album. It all started here with Delicate Country Ballads. You'll notice that it says No Tone. That was a fake record label that my friends Elisha and Mark came up with to basically write some really annoying songs. Such as this one about me losing my hubcap that I recorded with my good friend Alex, who, by the way, has recorded an awesome metal version of I've Lost My Halo. If you haven't done so already, be sure to check that out. Anyway, getting back to Delicate Country Ballads, I had no idea what I was doing. I recorded it, I burned a CD or two for a friend, and that's where it all started. Delicate Country Ballads.
I made SP303 when I was living in my friend Mark's living room. I was working at a live music venue and we needed something at the end of the night we could put on the sound system that would annoy everybody and make them go home. So I wanted to make the most annoying music possible. And so, using the SP303 sampler, I created this album. And, well, it's pretty annoying, so there's no tracks left. But one thing that was interesting about that album is that I would put it on and people would ask me what it was, who the artist was, and I would think, wait a minute, maybe I'm onto something here. SP303. Singing Solar System is a concept album based on each song taking on the personality of one of the planets. You'll notice at the top it says Commode. The reason for that is I had moved into a place and there was an attached bathroom, and I did a lot of recording in that bathroom, so I called it the Commode Abode. One of my favorite parts of this album is that it prominently features a Casio SK1 keyboard on every track. Now, the album really isn't available publicly. About the closest you can get is if you go onto Bandcamp and live on KXLU. One of the first songs is Venus, and that's from that album. And that's the Singing Solar System.
Instrumental Friends Part 1. Instrumental songs about my friends. I was so over the moon that my friends were listening to these silly songs I was writing, I decided to write instrumental songs for them. Now, these songs aren't public, but if you go on YouTube and do a search for Instrumental Friends, you can actually hear a couple of snippets from this album in the announcement I made when I was going to record Instrumental Friends Part 3. Now, around this time I was using the SR16 drum machine, which was my first time really getting some experience with the drum machine. So that's a little bit of information about Instrumental Friends, Part 1.
Poetic Injustice, poem set to music. I don't hear any music. That's because I lost this album. I made a couple of copies of it, I lent them out to friends, and I never got them back. And to my knowledge, the album is forever lost. This is the lost concept album. I just have a rough photo of the cover. But from what I remember, people really enjoyed it. It was basically, the concept was taking poems and putting them to music. But it's gone. There's no way to listen to it. That's Poetic Injustice. Instrumental Friends Part 2 is the second in the Instrumental Friends trilogy. This one focuses on acquaintances, so people that I knew of but didn't really know. For example, there's a song for a gal that I knew in high school, and then I was dating a gal and she started dating another guy, so I wrote a song for that guy. And I wrote a song for my friend Mike's dad. And actually, so Mike's dad, that track is on Bandcamp live on KXLU. So that's about the only track you can hear these days from Instrumental Friends Part 2.
Double feature. An album that features half of the songs recorded in analog and half of the songs recorded digitally. Yeah, I know, it's not much of a concept, but this was early on and I was still trying to figure things out. I was spending a lot of time with my friend Alex, who recorded an awesome metal version of I've Lost My Halo off of Divided States. Anyway, I was spending a lot of time with my friend Alex, and we were doing a lot of recording, so I figured I would take half of the songs that we wrote together and half of the songs that I had written on my own and put them together. That's it. Should also say that this was the first album where I really started to explore the idea of doing vocal harmonies. That's double feature.
Strange Things, songs written by Monk Turner, covered by Just Short of a Dollar. I was really inspired by this idea that Burt Bacharach and Elvis Costello did Painted from Memory, and then Bill Frisell decided to cover that album. So I thought maybe I'll write some songs, about 6 songs, and then do hardcore covers of them with a made-up band called Just Short of a Dollar. So essentially I would take this
Got a good idea, make a lot of money.
and turn it into this. Yeah, so not the greatest of music, so it's not available publicly. But it was an interesting idea. That's Strange Things. Master Reverbation. Yes, I called an album that. No, I'm not proud of it. But it was a turning point for me. It was an album where I actually started to put a little bit more work into the songs. And it's also a full length. It's an 18-song album. The concept, it's pretty weak. There's a lot of reverb on every track. But what was interesting about this album, it was still when I was burning copies of CDs for friends and handing them out, but they actually started making more copies than the ones I was handing out. And so it started to get a little bit of traction. And it made me realize, hey, you know, I might have something here. Maybe I should take this a little bit more seriously. There are still some friends that love songs on that album. That's Master Reverbation.
3060, a collection of 30-second songs and 60-second songs. Why the time? Well, I was starting to write music for advertisements, and some of the songs that got rejected I thought would make for pretty good songs on their own, so I decided to make an album of it. Not a lot is public. You can hear some tracks on the Live from KXLU album on Bandcamp, and By Consume is on 25th album. That's 3060. 4.5 Days, an album written and recorded in 4.5 days. I swear I had an album cover for this one, but I lost it. Go figure. Now, why 4.5 days, you ask? The reason is my good friend Alex, who wrote an awesome version of I've Lost My Halo, metal style. Yes, that Alex was moving to Japan and was kind enough to let me use his computer to record for 4.5 days. So I decided to record a whole album. Now, the album only has one song that is available publicly, and that's on 25th album, the song Done with a Computer. Aside from that, nothing's public. But it was quite a feat to try to write and record an album in 4.5 days, and in the middle of it I actually got sick. Anyway, that's the story of 4.5 days.
Wardrobe. The concept for this album was pretty simple. I would write the songs and have other people sing them. This was a turning point. The idea that I could write songs good enough that real legit singers would be open to singing them also marked a turning point in terms of moving more towards being a producer. You'll notice there's no album artwork because this was at a time when I stopped burning CDs and instead started to move towards uploading everything directly to archive.org with Creative Commons licenses. And at the time, there wasn't a way to upload album art, so no album art for this one. You can hear She Made Lo Mein on Bandcamp on the KXLU Live album. You can also hear a track off of 25th album called Ocean City. Wardrobe.
In a Barn, a collection of songs about animals. This was around the time when I decided I don't think I'm going to write or record music anymore. Well, that was until I met Chad Bloom, and sure enough, we started writing and recording music almost as soon as we met. One of the first songs we wrote was called Sheffield Farms, and it appears on 25th album. Another thing that happened is I started house sitting for a family that had a drum set in their garage, so I decided, hey, I'll record a concept album. I still don't think they know I recorded an entire album in their garage. Another track that's available from this album is Company Toad, which appears on the Live on KXLU album. That's In a Barn. Victory Dance, a collection of songs that you can dance to. In fact, every song on this album has a dance that goes along with it. Now, the album was recorded mostly using the Korg ESX1, which is a drum machine. The album also features a collective of musicians who would appear on subsequent albums. There's 2 tracks that are available publicly. One is on 25th album, and that is 1 Minute Tango, written with Louis Allen. And then if you listen to the Live on KXLU album, there are sprinklings of this album throughout those songs. And in fact, the whole performance was based around the Korg ESX1. That's Victory Dance.
Bonjour, c'est encore l'Autobus, tu me reconnais? Bon, je suis un homme maintenant. J'aime l'Amérique malgré tous les problèmes que dénonce Monk Turner. Ok, c'est parti pour une autre chanson. Ça parle de l'Idaho, le meilleur état de tous. Allez, un nouveau American Songbook.
Live on KXLU, a live performance on KXLU. In fact, one of my few live performances that's available to hear. I'm really proud of how it turned out. My friends Nick Ratliff and Casey Cole came with me to sing backup vocals, and it was just a really fun day. As I've alluded to, there's quite a few songs from the past that are covered on this live performance. It's only available on Bandcamp, but definitely worth a listen, live on KXLU. Taking requests, songs by request. This concept is exactly as it sounds. People would write asking for a song to be written, and I would write it for them. There are 2 songs from this album that are available publicly. The first is Macaroni, which is requested by my friend Emily. And essentially she was asking for a little bit of Rammstein, a little bit of Nina Simone. So we were able to get Dennis Giron to record some German on there, and Chad is doing a great job singing the soulful part at the end. And then we also have 3 a.m., which is a request by Matt about somebody who goes in the middle of the night to go get a donut and then walks home. So I got some very interesting requests for this album. This album also marks a turning point in terms of moving away completely from the analog 4-track world and heading into the digital computer world, and also starting to pay more attention to the production value of the songs that I was recording. That's Taking Requests.
Calendar, a song for every month of the year. Obviously a 12-song album. It's currently available on all streaming platforms in its entirety. This album was the first one I wrote where I had a demo review process, meaning I wrote all the songs first, I sent them out for feedback, and then I rewrote them according to that feedback. The other thing that's significant about this album is I really started to get influenced by some other genres I hadn't typically listened to, such as primarily soul and R&B music. So there's an array of genres on here, some hip-hop. It's a really fun album. Go take a listen to it. It's on, again, all of your streaming platforms, and that's Calendar.
Love Story, a collection of love songs that follows the Buddhist tale of 10 bulls. Now this album is actually a collaboration with a visual artist who also came up with the idea of 10 bulls, and he created a whole art piece around this album. The album marks me really digging into the idea of working with a collective of musicians versus it just being about me creating all of the music. There's some really great songs on this album, and I have to give credit to Christopher Warrior, who really helped to hone my production skills. Check it out, there's some great songs. Love Story.
Coordinates, songs on location. Now this album is one of the first albums where you don't hear my voice at all on the album. I had worked entirely with professional singers. Also, each song starts with a soundscape to put you in that place before getting into what the song is about. This was also around the time I was going to a weekly jam session led by Shin Kawasaki, and I was meeting a lot of really great musicians who played on this album. This album is available on all streaming platforms. I encourage you to take a listen to it. It's an album that I always consider to be the companion to Love Story. If you look at the 2 album covers, they're very similar in the red and black theme. And also stylistically, there's a lot of soul and R&B influence on this particular album. Check it out, that's Coordinates.
Emergency songs, songs before, during, and after a major earthquake. This album is very special to me because it was my first time being able to have the privilege to work with Alana Lynn Ramage, who of course later we would go on to write the birthday song and do a lot of other collaborations, but this was our first endeavor. She had this idea of doing an album entirely about earthquake preparedness, and I was all for it. I should also mention that Tony Austin plays drums on this album, is really the backbone of this album. He now plays with Kamasi Washington. One of my favorite aspects of this album is that we were really able to create a community around something called the Emergency Songs Band, and we started doing public performances, which is not something I had really done before with songs that I had written as part of my solo career. So it's available on all streaming platforms. I encourage you to take a listen to it. That's Emergency Songs.
Gold. Solid. When the game is tight, when the heat is on, she's the one you turn to.
Fixing all the wrongs.
Gold.
Protecting all your rights.
Solid. Luxury. Elegance. No time for 18 karat. She's always in demand. Super. Gold. Always says can. She's gold.
Solid.
Gold. Stay golden, baby.
The year? Well, it's 2013. The album? Instrumental Friends Part 3. That's right, I've decided for my next concept album I will complete the trilogy of Instrumental Friends with a whole new group of instrumental friends for you to enjoy. This album will be quite different from my most recent albums. To begin with, this will be my first true solo album in 10 years. No collaborations, no guest artists, just me making music the way I used to, by myself. There won't even be a demo review process, and quite likely the music will be experimental. In addition to the music, there will also be a visual component to this album. I'll be giving more information about that on my blog in the coming weeks, along with more information about who these songs are for. So hang tight, I've got more music coming your way. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you for listening. Word to your mother.
25th album, a collection of rarities, demos, live cuts, and oldies. Yeah, I've included a compilation album on here, so yeah, maybe it's not technically a concept album, but it is an album that's available for streaming. And as I mentioned several times here, this album is where a lot of the songs from my earlier concept albums are located, so I'm including it. I also recorded 2 songs just for this album, so I feel like it's okay to put it up here. Check it out, there's some really weird songs on there and some interesting stuff too. 25th album. God Complex, a collection of songs from the point of view of 12 of the Greek gods. Now, this album has a lot of videos that accompany it with each song, so I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail here, but rest assured you can go on YouTube and you can hear about how each song was created. The one thing I want to focus on this album is that it's very special to me because I got to collaborate with my mother before she died. All of the representations of the Greek gods were drawn by her. She was a very, very talented artist. It's a very special album, God Complex.
Divided States, songs about division. There was about a 5-year gap between this album and the previous album, God Complex. Now the reason is because I was just in a creative rut. I was so upset that Donald Trump, of all people, could become president of the United States. And that seeing so much division and turmoil in the United States, I just felt like that's what I wanted to write about, but I just couldn't get it out. Then the pandemic happened and I was locked in my studio, and that was really all I could do, and I just went to work on this album and broke through that creative block. Now this album is significant because it's my first true solo album in a while. I play all of the instruments, I sing on the album with the exception of one track where I'm singing with my daughter. But the album is available on all streaming platforms. There's additional content you could find on YouTube about it. It's out there. Speaking of out there, I've got 4 new albums I will be releasing. I'll be making that announcement very soon. Stay tuned.